very, kind of in this minimalist way that suits him and
Right.
that he feels fine with. He doesn't want more possessions. He feels it clutters up things.
Wow.
So I have, it's another level of trust for me. If he's a full-grown man, I've given him what I can, and ironically, he's followed my lead, and now it makes me nervous.
Yeah, but Oriah, overall, it sounds like you've done a fabulous job, and what a great perspective and insight. I mean, he sounds like he's got it going on.
Yeah.
I mean, there's not much more you can wish for your kids to feel that they actually are not only the fact that he's fulfilling his purpose and his dharma, that in itself is what a gift right there.
Yeah.
But that he recognizes the budgetary concerns. He's bringing in that practicality with the creative intuitive, and there's that balance. He's not off into flake land, living in a cardboard box that he's painted bright colors on the outside.
That's right.
Because it's, he's grounded, and he's got shelter, and he's got food, and he's making compromises, but, those compromises aren't infringing upon his safety or his health or his comfort level, I think that's phenomenal.
How do you, what is your, I have to say, he has a very strong feeling function. He always has, meaning, and by feeling function, I'm using it in Jungian terms here, of what has value for you subjectively, what has feeling value for you. So I'm interested that my elder son, who's much more like me, much more of a thinking type in some ways, he works as a manager at McDonald's.
Okay.
That's what he did throughout university, right? So every once in a while, I kind of give him a little nudge about, what else is he going to do or whatnot. And he describes to me what happens for him in the work that he has. First of all, he works, as you would at McDonald's, with people who are in their first job at minimum wage and a fairly crappy job at that. So it's about, can he train them? Can he support them? But the most interesting thing recently, thankfully they'll never listen to this interview, he'd be shooting me, but is that there's another manager who's supposedly on the same level as he. There's many layers of managers in this, who was supposed to take on some tasks. And it's clear over time that this other gentleman is not up for the tasks that need to be done. So as my son is trying to train him, things keep falling through the cracks. And most often when the other guy does the task, Brendan's got to redo it. He's got to do it over again, right? So I, mom to the defense here, hearing these stories many times, said to him, you really should just go and tell your boss that this guy is not, he's drawing the same salary, he's doing the same, and he's not doing his share of the responsibilities. And he says to me, Mom, he has 5 people. He came from India, and he has 5 people at home who are dependent on him. And my job, my challenge, is to find a way that he can do this job, because he really can't afford to lose it.
What a good guy you've raised, Oriah.
But you know what is a stunning example of is you don't need, and I have nothing against people leaving their jobs and becoming healers or teachers or whatever they want to do, but you don't need to do that to bring that awareness to what you do. He's working at McDonald's. Yeah, and I'm saying here, like, this is not.
But he's a manager affecting everyone else there, and look at his attitude. I mean, it's the trickle down effect. It's like and that's what I love about what you just said. You don't have to, go, live in, as a recluse and be a healer. You can take a very real job as being a manager of McDonald's and make a difference in people's lives. And touch those people with your integrity, with your heart, with your, look at that compassion that he has.
Yeah. I was so humbled because I'm telling you, I wasn't there. I was like, get him fired.
I've heard myself in the same thing with my daughter. She's a manager of a restaurant too, and I've said the same thing, and she's come back. And I thought, okay, shut up, Mom, because you know what? You've raised her to be a compassionate person, and she's teaching you a lesson right now.
Right. And he's not trying to just do the other guy's job. He's saying, my challenge is, can I teach him in a way that he can learn how to do this? That's the challenge. Not just, I'll just do his job and my job too. Right? Can I find a way that he can actually learn this and do this? That's my challenge, kind of thing. So I'm, there's lots of ways that people can bring the essence of what they really want to meet. And having said that, if you find yourself in a workplace where it just wears you down so much, because this takes energy, right?
Yes.
And we do have choices about how we use our energy and how much we let our energy be depleted. And we're back, full round to the solstice in terms of this energy is available. How do you want to use it? So if you're in a place that truly feels toxic to you and you can't do this, I'm not sure I could do what my son is doing in this situation, quite frankly. In fact, if I was a betting woman, I'd be betting on a no on that one. In that context where the work itself is not particularly exciting. It's not for a higher he has all the qualms we all have about McDonald's food, but it's not, it's not dressed up in that at all, which I think for me would probably be more essential.
Right.
So you have a right to say that this isn't a place I can do that, to know yourself well enough. And really see whether it is or not, but not to kind of base that again on the ideal, on the idea, but on what actually happens. Can you bring more of yourself to wherever you are in your smallest interactions, right? I think in one of my books I talked about when my dear friend Catherine had the brain aneurysm burst and was in the hospital, and I was going back and forth to the hospital, and one day when the guy in the parking garage asked me how I was, I kind of blurted out all that was happening for my friend who was in a coma. And then several weeks later, as I came through, he recognized me and he said, "How is your friend? Is she doing okay?" I can't tell you what that did for me in the context of this very difficult situation. And I thought to myself, right, if you're a parking attendant, which heaven only knows, the boringness of it would challenge me, you can still bring yourself to these people that you see, and he did.
Oh, that's wonderful, and this is how change happens, and this is how love affects others, and this is where we get those little glimmers of that unconditional love. That piece of, we may not be able to maintain unconditional love 24/7, but there's glimmers of it, and there's pieces of it, and it does. I see the ripple effect all the time, and it can be positively, it can be a negative, and it's the more conscious we are of what we're putting out there and our compassion. It's amazing how healing and transformative that is, and not just for us, but everyone else we touch, so that every job is important. I always like the saying, even if you're a street sweeper, be the best street sweeper you can be. Yeah. Because if you're putting your intention and your integrity into that job and you're doing it with a joyful heart, that will radiate out, and others will, they'll see someone, wow, he's a happy street sweeper.
Yeah.
How come, I've got so much more money and so many more toys and I'm miserable, So it really comes down to that moment of truth within ourselves, are we living our truth? Are we speaking our truth? Are we walking our talk? And we can do it in any profession. It's just a matter of really tapping into the truth of it.
Can we be grateful for, the interdependency thing, and I often think of this when I'm on the highway driving, how much my life is at that moment dependent on scores of other people. All the other drivers around me, the people who repair my vehicle, the people who built my vehicle, right? Yeah. Just dependent on so many other people having done their job. And when I really have a flash of that, then I just, sending out a prayer of gratitude to those people. And I think that one of the horrible things that happens in a money culture is we think, well, they got paid to do their job. You know what I mean? That's enough. And it's not enough pretty much for any of us. Really, it's it's the expression of gratitude. My father was a lineman for Ontario Hydro, and he had such a strong sense when he would go out at 40 below zero when the power was off, of how the community depended on what he did. And so the diminishment of, this hierarchy of occupations we have, whether we're talking about it in a class way, a monetary way, or we're talking about it in a spiritual way, right? Was that a spiritual job my dad was doing? Well, I'll tell you, at 40 below zero, if your furnace won't come on, you're not looking for a shaman, you're looking for a lineman,
Right. Right.
Just that component that's there in all kinds, in all kinds of occupations, and the way, you see it even more in a city than when I lived in the country, because we're so interdependent. I'm so appreciative every time I look around Toronto, especially in the solstice time, for all the trees that are here. And as I get older, maybe, I don't know why this happens, but I get more and more aware of how much work it takes to maintain a large number of trees in a big urban area. The people who specialize in that, who plant them, who trim them so they don't break down in storms, all that kind of stuff. I just get more and more a sense of, wow, that takes a lot of resources on a lot of level, and I'm so grateful that that's where those resources are going.
And that's why it comes to you on that level, because of your gratitude. Because of your deep appreciation and gratitude for these trees, you're able to see, the cycle of these trees and what brings it to you in that moment. Mm-hmm. And it is dependent upon all these other people. And these people who, so many look at as insignificant because they're just a tree trimmer or they're just a gardener. And it's such a sad state of perception for our culture when we diminish people's jobs, because there's we couldn't exist without the cohabitation and the help, the support from one another in these, whether it's considered a menial job or whether it's a high-powered, prestigious job. There's this thread, and that gratitude is so important and so underappreciated. We take so much for granted.
One of the things to do for summer solstice is sit down with something as simple as a fresh piece of fruit. Literally the bloom that happens in the time of light, and really, before you eat it, begin to think about all the people who have been involved in getting that fruit to you.
Oh, wonderful.
From the people who planted the seeds for the trees to the people who tend the trees and pick the fruit, the farm workers to the truckers who drive this stuff, just all the way down the line. The literally kind of, dozens of people that have been involved in you having the product of this time of light, the fruit, in your hand.
Right. Oh, wonderful.
It changes things a lot, actually, when we can pause and do that for a minute.
And it's also one of those experiences that as we start to have or even become more aware of our own gratitude for simplicity, we seem to expand upon our own gratitude. We start to look at other things that we're grateful and appreciative of, and what we've taken for granted. And, and all of those things. So,
and that flips right over then into social justice, because the minute I start to become aware of all the people involved, do I want any of those people being paid a substandard living wage?
Right.
Do I want my apple at that cost? No. I'm willing to pay more for the apple. I'd like to know that I'm paying more because the farm worker that's picking the apple is getting a living wage.
Right.
So he or she can care for their family and their children also.
That's right. And that's consciousness. That's where our gratitude takes us. It's almost like it's a natural flow of opening our consciousness. It's not like we have to go somewhere and buy our consciousness. It's within us all this time. It's basically just having this openness and appreciation and gratitude where it expands naturally.
So
what a wonderful show.
That I would ask also is, where do you need to bloom? Where do you want to bloom? Where do you want to let your own light shine? And again, that might be in small ways. In this extroverted culture, we think of bloom and shine as fame and fortune, versus I have healing energy in my hand. Somebody may, and that comes out when I stroke my child's back when they're sick. And